Hey everyone, Nick Labinskas here on video for Navitas Ventures, and I'm chatting to my old neighbour. And I didn't leave the country because of you, Sid. It was good to have some tech in the neighbourhood, but
that's the rumours.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for joining me today in winter in Sydney, where it's sweltering hot here in San Francisco. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Mate, just tell us as a starting point a bit about yourself and what you're working on.
So my name's Sidney. I'm from Sydney. I currently have launched a new venture called ImpactLadder. It's all about helping people develop themselves into their extraordinary. And this is a way of lifting individuals first and then teams and organizations. And in terms of how I got here, it's been 20 years of doing ventures both in Australia, Silicon Valley, doing a bunch of deals in the US, UK, Asia. All along, I had the opportunity to hire, develop people. And I also had a passion for coaching people. So I keep telling people I sort of didn't have a choice in doing this. It sort of picked me. This is where I need to be right now in my life.
Awesome. And where's ImpactLadder at the moment as a business?
So I just exited my last company end of March, Contexty. We got acquired. And so really it's ImpactLadder is very new, but it's up and running. I've already got customers actually from around the world, US, Australia, Asia. So basically it's an online program that's made up of a combination of training, that's pre-recorded content, live coaching calls with cohorts, community and support. And it's all along, the whole idea is being a supportive environment to help people learn and grow. And so we can get into the details about what's the current problem with the way we teach and coach our people. But fundamentally, answering your question, where are we at? We're up, we're running, and I've got both people can come onto the program directly through the website. And we're now also doing B2B sales, going into enterprises, dealing at the C-level where they're concerned about organizational performance. But in my humble view, they're taking the wrong approach. They're pushing the message around customer first and team. And, everyone should be a salesperson in this organization rather than going, wait a minute, you're a human. How are we enabling you to grow as a person and achieve your goals? And how are we trying to align that with what our organization is trying to achieve? So we've sort of turned this whole model upside down in the way we're approaching it.
Running a company is pretty hard, and dealing with competition, growth, disruption, managing it profitably. What's my motivation as a manager to be starting with the employees' development? How do I add that on top of what I'm already doing, and what's the ROI on that?
So if you think about it, it's a bit like saying, what's the ROI on eating well and exercising daily? It's one of these things where, I'm busy, I don't have time to exercise, so, I'll leave it for later, but I'll try to apply some makeup right now, and maybe I might pretend that my skin looks healthy, but actually internally I've got problems. And so in line with what we've seen many times over, both in organizational leadership as well as political leadership, this short-termism. I will do just what's under my nose right now because that's all I can handle right now. So it takes a little bit of vision and a little bit of tenacity to go, look, we're going to play the long game here. Fundamentally, we need to invest in our people. It's firstly, if you're wanting to turn it into a ROI or P&L conversation, it's the biggest expense line in the organizational P&L. So, if you're talking about, financial motivation, well, it's your biggest cost line, and how well are you managing that investments as such, right?
Yep.
So we can take that angle, but I'd like to take a far more practical angle and say, well, have you been struggling with the teamwork side of things? Are you, advocating customer first and everyone ought to be the next salesperson in the organization because blah, blah, blah. That's all great, but what's in it for the individual? And we all know if it's us individually, if my heart isn't switched on, if I'm not sort of excited about my leader and my organization and the purpose, It's just a job. I'll go in, I'll come out, I'll clock the hours, I'll do my thing. So back to the question, what's in it for the leaders to think about it this way? I think they're seeing the symptoms, but maybe they haven't diagnosed the problem in the way that I'm proposing and what ImpactLadder is going on about in the way we're approaching it.
Okay, great. And what's the ambition? Is this a fun side project, or you want to really grow this, building it global day one? Like, what's the long-term goal?
So in terms of an audacious goal, I've said, so it's not a side project. It's the only thing that I'm doing. So all other things have come to a complete end. And that was one of the primary reasons why I decided to exit my data analytics business. It's not like data analytics is not growing. It's a growing market. It's just that back to alignment with my own purpose and where I feel I'm going to have the greatest impact, as well as a global play. I'd been planning this and working on this for a while. So it was like time to do it. And the big audacious goal is we want it to be the default soft skills training company for the global tech industry. So as people think about training their non-sales people in customer service, teamwork, all the EQ soft skill stuff that we talk about, instead of doing this one-day thing where we go, right, stop everything you're doing, go to this one-day course, and already they're uncomfortable, they're not in their comfort zone. And then we pile them with 8 hours or 16 hours if it's 2 days worth of content, which is, just overload. And then they come back to their desks and what they've got is, 15,000 emails and, they've got 15,000 emails and they've got, 20,000 Jira tickets to deal with. So they forget there's no behavioral change, right? Whereas this approach is an ongoing support mechanism to be by their side and grow with them and enable them and coach them and support them. So big audacious goal, default soft skills training and development company for the global tech industry. Right.
Nice. And that, I have to say the word focus in every podcast. So that's your focus is tech companies globally. Are you focusing on corporates or startups, any particular role? There's a lot of breadth in there.
Yes.
What's your focus?
So firstly, I'll start with the not focused, then I'll drill into the focus. So the way I describe the content of how it's been created and what it is, I say my 3 kids could use it because it's all about mindset and communication and engagement and understanding other humans in their context, all the way to my 2 70-year-old parents who are still working. They could use it in their job, right? So the kind of value you get out of this behavioral stuff, it's valuable for everyone. But back to focus, and in my previous sort of roles, I've been a sales coach and trainer for people, and I talk about being a narrow niche ninja. And so eating my own dog food, my narrow focus is to position for tech companies and people that currently see themselves in tech roles that effectively have a customer interface, right? So we're talking about global services companies and tech companies is like Sysmex. These are the large end of town organizations. So I'm not necessarily after startups, but because of the model and the pricing and the simplicity, if someone sees this video and they're inspired to check it out, they can, and there's ways for them to onboard. But in terms of where I'm spending my B2B focus and the global advisors and reseller model that I've set up, we're all going after the B2B organization. So I've got someone in San Francisco who's also a coach. He's a presentation coach. I've got someone in the UK, India, Singapore, and Australia. So everyone brings a different sort of skill set to my energy.
Yeah, excellent. And how does this this balance out with in terms of like the trends around micro-credentials and lifetime learning? There's sometimes a tension between those two. Where do your philosophies lie on those?
Yeah. So look, I've got a bunch of noises in the head, right? Because people are saying, do I get accredited for this? And, do I get a certificate and things like that? And so it could be something that we end up doing. It's not difficult to do, to set up, an online accreditation format for them to, be able to demonstrate. But actually one of the core things that I'm hammering home in all of this is shut out the external noise. you are your extraordinary self and you are your best mentor, right? The best version of you is who you should be looking up to. So society has taught us to need other people's approval, and having accreditation is one form, right? And of course we want our parents' approval and want our partner. And like, this is so part of the mindset work that I do as part of this course, the courses that, you know, we've got in this program and other programs that we bring out. At a foundation level, we're saying it doesn't matter what others think of you. You're on your path. Back yourself and have a go. Now, if someone feels like they need a certificate enough, if I say that's the market need, no drama. Like that's not, you know, an issue for me to say absolutely not or absolutely yes, but we're open. But this is all in line with, you know, there are many ways to learn. This is not the only thing out there, of course. There are many great things out there. This is yet another voice for a set audience. So I'm a messenger for a set audience at this time frame in the world, right? And that's it. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting feedback loop between education and the value of that education being exercised, feeding back into the value of the education and the perception of the value of that education itself. Because obviously a degree from Harvard is valuable because everyone believes a degree from Harvard is valuable, but also if it wasn't valuable, it would erode over time. But that's I think where we've got to, is that some traditional education has eroded in value over time, and therefore accreditation itself, you know, it doesn't always just having a certificate from XYZ university doesn't mean you actually had a great education or can do the job. So there's a lot of pressure on that, and I certainly see that there's disruption coming in a lot of areas around education, opportunities to change. And it's very important. It should be changed. So
I agree with you 1,000%. So fundamentally, it's you know. So firstly, back to this. You know, I think that these large organizations, institutions, have become lazy, and so they're going to have a Kodak moment. And being an Aussie Mick, you'll understand what I mean by the Kodak moment. Mm. You know, and for the non-Aussie listeners, you know, Kodak, the famous company, used to run ads in Australia that, you know, they used to try to get an emotional sale whereby taking a beautiful family photo and they go, that was a Kodak moment. And then of course the joke became later when they disappeared because they didn't innovate quickly enough. We talk about that as being the Kodak moment, where you were a market leader and then you disappeared because you didn't move quickly enough to address the disruption. So I think these large institutions that for hundreds of years have made a lot of money and have built these big walls around themselves absolutely are going to get disrupted. And I say to my kids right now, do uni if you want, don't do it if you don't want. You know, whereas, you know, my parents' generation, the whole thing that they immigrated to Australia was for our kids' education and the university degree, and I couldn't care less. Like, not that I'm not valuing it, but me personally. And I think the market's going to dictate that these organizations will get disrupted. It's far more relevant, timely, agile solutions that are needed. And hopefully, you know, ImpactLadder is one of the drivers of change, along with many, many, many other successful organizations in the world that are driving this change right now. So agree with you 1,000%. Yeah,
interesting. And what's your sense of education in the next 10 years as AI starts to become more practically implemented in terms of changing careers in the future of work? What are some of the big trends you think are, what are the ones you think are going to happen, and what are the ones that maybe are more hype than reality?
It's funny, right? Because I've just come from exiting an AI business as such, or data or big data AI. It's all bunched into the same thing for 7 years. So I think it's overplayed right now in terms of hype, if you ask me. I think definitely jobs will change. That's a driver, and that's why you should invest in yourself. And before you worry about skill, you want to worry about mindset and core competency. So that's the angle we're taking, rather than, because skills can be taught and you can pick up a skill fairly quickly. Whereas if at a mindset level, you're already in fear that AI is going to take everything and the robots are taking over and the world's ending, well, you've already lost, and you're not going to learn a skill, even if I have the best trainers around you, because at a mindset level and emotional level, you're disconnected and you're not a believer in yourself. So I think, look, predictions are predictions. I don't think we're going to, see massive change. But I think we see enablement in education. So like right now, my 2 high schoolers, they have to take laptops to school. So that's already a big jump, and they're using Google Classroom. And even if you look at the behavioral, and this is not AI, of course, but we're seeing how technology is catching up and getting involved in the way our kids are learning. Or for example, I work fairly decent hours because I choose to. I love what I do, but I'm not disconnected from my kids, because at 3 o'clock when they get home, I get an email and not inviting me to a Google sheet or a Google Doc that's their homework, and I'm collaborating with them live during when I'm fresh and they're fresh. We're not waiting till 8 o'clock at night. So I think we'll see these kinds of things change in the way we're learning, and it's far more real time. And if AI does something for us, great. Like if it makes learning easier, awesome. So my middle child, for example, if you ask him a question, first thing he's on Google. And people are like, oh, you're on Google. Well, yeah, that's where the answers are. Go for it. You're a problem solver. You get it, right? That's, so
yeah,
I think that's it.
Interesting, mate. I don't know if you remember in the movie The Graduate, the guy says, you should go into plastics. And it used to be like, hey, you should be an accountant or a lawyer, a doctor. I got 3 young kids. We're thinking about any kind of skill that they could learn to help them have a great life over the next 50 years. What's the first thing that comes? If it was one thing, like, you know what, you should really, everyone needs to, what do you think?
Communicate.
Okay. Communication skills.
Yeah. I mean, everyone talks about you need to learn to code, and I'm like, technology is going to outcode the coders. So if we're talking about where that's going to go, that's where my view is. Like, it's going to be far more. AI is going to do that much better than we will. But ultimately, in our lifetime, we're not going to be overtaken by machines. So if you want a hard prediction, Mick.
Okay. Nice.
And which means that the human skills are super important, because everything else is actually getting taken over by the technology and automation and AI. Yep. So in terms of what I personally advocate is, empathy, communication, context awareness, and your adaptability to things, right? So back to the working on your mindset and your emotions and having the solid foundation of confidence that you can deal with change. So that's what I advocate. So even though I've spent 20 years in the tech space, first thing I say is forget about the tech. Someone will out-tech your tech, but no one can out-human your own human version of you.
Good. Communication. Love it, mate. Hey, mate, thank you so much for sharing. I really, really appreciate it. And best of luck with ImpactLadder. It looks great and a great start. Thanks for sharing your thoughts about the future of education. And I hope to see you soon, mate.
Good. Thanks for having me, and good job with what you're doing up there.
Yeah, no problems. Everyone, ImpactLadder.com. Go check it out and tell us what you think.